to type in something you're most grateful for from the year, something that you're most grateful for from the entire year of 2020. And I think for me, um, I was really thinking about this last night. I think for me, it's probably been just the ability to do Zoom and to do more things. I feel like my time has been a little bit better leverage. I've been able to not travel as much, which was a good thing for me this year. So I'm definitely grateful for that. And would love to hear some of the things that you guys are grateful for from this year too, in the chat. It's kind of hard to think about from the whole year. But while you guys are thinking about that, I had to share this because I think this is so hilarious. And I'm wondering if anybody else is feeling the same way. The space between Christmas and New Year's where you don't know what day it is, who you are, or what you're supposed to be doing. This one like gets me every time this year, this week. I feel so always out of sorts, but it's a good feeling too. Last week we talked about the generosity podcast from Simon Sinek. Several people asked in the Facebook group, so I just wanted to re-share with you guys and remind you that if you have a quick 24 minutes, I would highly encourage you to listen to it. It was the December 8th episode, and he interviews his friend Anne Marie. I think you say it Chichili, I think is how you say her last name. Anyway, it was great, to be honest. It was a really great episode, just all on generosity. Quickly want to touch base on who has watched this. Type in the chat. Would love to know who has seen the Queens Gambit, yes or no, in the chat. We binged this actually a couple of weeks ago, probably. It's been now, actually, I don't know, a little bit ago. It's really good. I didn't think I was going to be into it, but I ended up really liking it. Kendall, you would really like it. It was really good. But this morning I actually saw something interesting that I wanted to share with you about this. The Queen's Gambit has been viewed now by 62 million people, which is nuts. The producer, Alan Scott, is on BBC News talking about how it took 30 years with 9 rewrites, and every studio that he showed it to said no one would ever be interested in chess. So please persevere with that thing that you're making, or the thought that you're having, or the thing that you want to do. I found that encouraging, and I just thought that was crazy. Yes, Abby said you guys finished it in 2 days. Because man, you would never think that to watch the show, because it's just so good. But yeah, 30 years, 9 rewrites, and everyone turning it down. So interesting. I love those stories. I like to hear the stories of the ones who triumph and push through. So today I'm going to share a lesson about this book, Get Out of Your Head. It is a spiritual based book, and there's also a lot of really great things in there too. For people of faith, I think it's really great as well. And for not, it's okay, because there's tons of great stuff, but it talks a lot about your mind. And so I wanted to share with you some of the best things I've taken away from this book. I do think I am going to do a book club on it, because I've had a lot of requests and it's just been really good. So she starts by talking about thinking about our thinking. And I feel like that is totally our mindset, right? So because how we think shapes how we live. And so she shares a stat according to a national study in 2016. By the way, I'll pause and say one of the reasons why I love this book is every single thing that she quotes and or talks about is all in the back, broken down by each chapter. And so she what's the word I'm looking for, she like references all of these stuff. She's done so much research, and I love that. I'm into that. So she said, did you know that more from this study, more has been discovered about our minds in the last 20 years than in all the time before that? And research actually shows that 75 to 80% of mental, physical, and behavioral illness comes from one's thought life. 75, think about that, 75% of that comes from the things that we choose to think about. And I thought that was insane, that over the last 20 years, there's been more research done about our brains and our minds. She says, your emotions lead us to thoughts, and then those thoughts can dictate our decisions. That should say, and our decisions determine our behaviors, and then the behaviors shape our relationships, all of which take us back to either a healthy or an unhealthy thought. But the good news is that we can change our thinking. And so I'm curious and would love to hear from you guys. If you've ever experienced a time or thought about actually changing your thinking, and maybe you didn't think a great way and you were able to change that. The average person has more than 30,000 thoughts per day. It seems like that's a big number, and then when you actually think about all the thoughts that you have, it's not, doesn't seem that big. Most people of faith would say the greatest spiritual battle of our generation is being fought between our ears, and you sometimes hear that a lot. The bad news is that the enemy of our souls has no intention of releasing the grip on our minds without a fight, and he doesn't really play fair. And that's because our brains are great at grabbing distractions. And if you think about it, I would like for you to think about, and you can maybe type in the chat, what are some of those distractions for you? Actually, one of them may be one we already talked about today, which is Netflix. But you can think about the things that are distracting from your mind that could potentially keep you in a not so great mindset. We find ourselves where our thoughts have control over us instead of the other way around. And this is something I've worked on for years, which is why I love to talk about mindset, because um, many of you will know this. Many of you from Keller Williams will know this, but when you want to learn something, you go and teach it, right? And so that's a way for you to master it and get better at it. Jenny shares in the book, the danger of toxic thinking is that it produces an alternative reality, one in which distorted reasoning actually seems to make sense. And so what she means by that is sometimes our thinking can get to a place or can get toxic so much so that we start to rationalize the toxic or negative things that we're thinking, and we make them make sense. And sometimes that's not good. Yes. I can't see who's on from KW Louisville East. I'm wondering if it's Amy. I can't see. Okay. Oh, yes, I see Amy now. Yes. Busyness is a distraction for a lot of us, for sure. It definitely is for me. But one of the things, this is just hitting the surface of this book, but she says you have a choice. And you have a choice regarding where you focus your energy. We all do, right? You have a choice regarding what you actually live for. And this part I think is very hopeful. We're not subject to our behaviors, our genes, maybe how we were brought up, or our circumstances. We're not subject to our passions or lust or emotions. We are not subject to our thoughts. And we actually have a choice because we possess weapons that we can destroy strongholds. So we can get past those negative thoughts. And so I want you to think about, maybe, especially for people of faith. Oh, Michelle, I love the book, The Secret. That's such a good one, by the way. That's a great book for those of you who haven't read that. I haven't read that in a long time. Think about somebody who maybe stands out to you as someone who chooses to trust their faith more than they actually trust their ability to make everything work out fine. And it's funny because I can actually think, well, it's not funny, it's great, but I can think of several people, and I just feel like they never have really negative thoughts, or they're never in a bad mood, or um, they don't trust their ability to make sure everything's going to work out okay. They have their faith, they fixate on their faith. And so a question that she asks in the book for us to think about is, what do you fixate on? And she gets kind of deep about this in the book, and she says most of us will know the answer because it's the thing that we think about constantly. Could it be that you are fixated on maybe the fear that one day you're going to lose your child, or or right now that you're going to get COVID and you're going to die, or you're going to become really unhealthy, or maybe you're going to get a disease, or maybe you're fixated on work. A lot of us are, and it's all that you think about. And so she really encourages you to think about, what is it that you are fixated on? Because if that's what you're thinking about all the time, then that's where your mind is going to go, and that's how you are, that's who you're going to be, that's how you're going to be as a person. And so she said, when we think new thoughts, we physically alter our brains. When we think new thoughts, we make healthier mental connections. When we think new thoughts, we blaze new trails. I love that one. And when we think new thoughts, everything can actually change for us. She talks a lot about Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a professor, and she quotes him in the book a lot. And I can't actually remember where he's from, but he writes on the brain, and he said, where attention goes, mental firing flows and neural connection grows. So patterns that you thought were fixed are actually things that with mental effort can indeed be changed. We are not passive in all of this activity of mind and awareness. And I think that's so true, because what we really think about, when I was writing this out last night, our brains actually become those things. We fixate on them, and what we fixate on is neurologically who we will be. Um, she shares a lot in the book about how just so many things come from your different thoughts. And she says, when you have one thought and then you have another thought, and then you have another thought, and then you have another thought after that, tell me what you're thinking about, in other words, and I'll tell you who you are. and and I love that as an example to use. Michelle, that was the very first thing I thought of, is the bowl ball, what you focus on expands, for sure. Nope, sorry. There's a little beep going on over here. But the great thing is you and I can learn to mind our minds. I've actually put that in my phone, in my notes, because I wanted to keep remembering that we can mind our minds to the point that controlling our thoughts actually becomes reflexive, and it's an automatic intuitive response. Do any of you feel like you're already there in that spot where you have an automatic intuitive response and you control your every thought? I would love to pick your brain if so. I'm to the point of working on that. I think that we are all probably a little bit of a work in progress when it comes to that. So she shares this story, and I thought this would be a great action item, especially for any of you that lead teams. So she shares that she did this for a group that she leads, but a large group of like 300 people that she leads. She said that she got a giant whiteboard and she brought it into a room, and you could use a large piece of paper, or poster board, or anything like that. And at the top, she wrote, "What are you thinking about?" And so she said she had little dozens of colored sticky notes all around the whiteboard that said, "What are you thinking about?" And there were all of these options on the sticky notes. And it was other people's opinions, finances, work, plans, the holidays, the weekend, the news, health, sickness, family, my kids, politics, friends, broken relationships, my spouse, finding a spouse, stress at work, failures, rejections, pain, joy, good memories, hiking, working out, and all sorts of different things. You get the picture. And so what she did was she said, okay, I want everybody to go up and grab the ones that you are currently thinking about in your mind. And then she said that she did this as an exercise because if you actually Google how many of our 30,000 thoughts are positive versus negative, 70% is what most researchers come to. Right around 70% are negative. And that blew my mind. And so she said that her point proved true because all of the Post-it notes that were taken were the negative ones. And the ones that were still left up there were joy and good memories and strength and some of those things. But people were thinking about all of these negative things. And so she talks about we just need a new normal. And I think this so greatly plays into our Wednesday morning mindsets going into a brand new year. And I'm so glad that this book like came across. And honestly, do you guys know how I found this book? It was an ad on my Instagram. And now I had so many people that have said that they have either just ordered it or they're looking to order it. But I'm so glad that it did. And I think it was for a reason, because going into a new year, that's a perfect time to think about a new normal for your minds. She says in the book this quote, "I can escape the thought pattern and seize a new thought pattern. I can make a mental shift, and by changing my mind, I can change my emotions, which interrupts that entire progression we looked at earlier that results in how I'm experiencing life." And I don't know, actually, I'll share with you guys a quick little story. I don't know if you can see this. I know it's kind of dark, but I have this little tiny beaded bracelet. Can you see that, Vonda? Can you see that? I only see you right now. Okay. It's like, and it's all frazzled and coming apart now, but this bracelet, someone gave it to me at the end of last year, and it's called an intention bracelet because my word of 2020 was intentional. And so I've not taken it off. I mean, it's literally, it's lost beads at this point, and it's falling apart, considering I'm coming up on 365 days of it. And, and it is to remind you of being intentional. And so I put that on January 1st this year. And I said, I'm not going to take it off until January 1st, 2021. I still might not take it off actually until it falls apart, because my word was intentional. And this year I really wanted to focus on being intentional. I wanted that to be a new normal for me, that I just was very intentional with the things that I'm doing. And I know those of you who study John Maxwell, that's one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned from him, is just the lesson of intentionality. And so I keep thinking about, as I go into next year, I haven't picked my word of the year next year. If any of you have, I would love for you to put it in the chat. I love seeing what everyone else's word of the year is. Oh, Sam, that was your word too. Yeah. And I do feel like that this year I was very intentional. I definitely moved the needle forward with my intentionality. And so as I keep coming into next year and the word for next year, I feel like it's got to be something with mindset and just, I don't know, I keep thinking about it and this new normal, because I will be the first to admit I creep into some negative thoughts, and I want to get myself to the spot where if we go back where she says controlling our thoughts becomes reflexive, and I want it to be an intuitive response. So I love that. I think it's just kind of touching the surface, and I wanted to share those with you from this book. If you are interested, I would say order it. And sometime in the beginning of January, I'm going to post about doing some sort of a book club or a Bible study on it. And would love for you guys to participate. Oh, simplify is a great word. Intentional, Dawn. Yes, that's still such a good one. Boundaries, integrity is always a great one. Yeah, I love this. I just got my new planner yesterday. So all day tomorrow, Adam and I are going to be doing our annual planning for the year. So I've got to choose my word by then so I can write it in the front of my journal. Lastly, these are questions that we shared last week, but several of you asked. Follow through, Jeff, is a great one. Several of you asked for these again. So if any of you are looking to end your end of the year before you ring in the new year this week, these were some great questions that came from John Maxwell for you to maybe ponder on, journal about, think about, talk with your family or your teams or your friends or anybody with. What's one thing you're grateful for in 2020? What's one thing you'll be glad to leave behind? I know several of you said virtual school for your kids. What habits have you developed this year that you will carry over into next year? What relationships have you developed that you want to continue? What's brought you hope during this year? What will you remember most fondly? What's your greatest wish for next year? And what will you do to ensure that that comes true? And so I would encourage you to just maybe think about those and noodle on them. And yeah, that's it. So hopefully you guys loved what came from this book. I am thankful for you to be on and all the people we have watching live on Facebook. And I wish each of you a very happy new year. And I will see you next Wednesday in 2021. Wow, that's hard to believe, isn't it? Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your week. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Dan.